Why did the most luxurious mansions of the Golden Age become a veritable nightmare for servants as soon as the sun disappeared behind the horizon? You may believe in the grandeur of this era, but behind the glitter of crystal chandeliers lay a world of coldness and silent fear. Huge houses turned into labyrinths where every rustle could mean disaster for one's reputation or the end of one's career. The lives of maids and footmen after midnight were governed by laws that were not discussed in high society salons. Within these walls, silence was not a sign of peace, but a tool for suppressing human will. Architects of the time deliberately designed hidden staircases and narrow passageways to keep the servants out of sight. At night, these corridors became the dark arteries of the house, through which shadows and white caps glided silently. Servants were required to be on constant alert, waiting for the bell to ring at any moment. Watch the video to the end to find out what fatal secret was hidden in the layout of Victorian corridors and why the night shift could cost a young girl her life. What I am about to show you has long been hidden behind the ceremonial portraits of the aristocracy. During the Golden Age, the house was clearly divided into two parallel universes. For the owners, it was a temple of luxury, and for the servants, it was a place of eternal duty. Even sleep was considered an unallowable luxury for those who lived below the stairs. Their existence was subject to a strict rhythm that did not take physical fatigue into account. Every movement of a maid had to be absolutely silent. She was just an incorporeal spirit, protecting the peace of her masters. At night, the vast spaces of the mansions were filled with frightening shadows and drafts. Many young women spent their best years hardly ever seeing the sunlight. Their fates were completely in the hands of their capricious masters. The owners often saw the staff as nothing more than functional interior objects. Beauty and youth quickly faded in the damp laundry rooms. Relationships within the servant community were steeped in a rigid hierarchy. Everyone was afraid of making a mistake that could be fatal to their future. The darkness of the corridors only emphasized the powerlessness of the people in the face of powerful dynasties. Servants were forced to hide their true feelings behind a mask of obedience. The wealth of the mansions was built on the complete subjugation of those who cooked and cleaned. Life in a golden cage was the only chance for women from poor families. However, the price of this survival often proved too high for their mental health. Night shifts turned into endless waiting for the master's whims. The thin walls of the servants' quarters did not protect them from the sounds of someone else's luxurious life. While glasses clinked upstairs, an atmosphere of heavy anticipation reigned below. The servants were obliged to remain loyal to a house that gave them no warmth. Every night was a test of endurance and humility. Social pressure forced the girls to suppress any expression of their own personalities. They became shadows that were obliged to disappear at the first appearance of the master. In the world of the Golden Age, status even determined the right to proper rest. The night hours were the time when the social divide was felt most acutely. The silence of the huge house weighed heavily on the minds of the young maids, torn from their families. Loneliness among hundreds of expensive things became an unbearable burden. They knew every creak of the floorboards but had no voice. The darkness hid their tears and helpless rage at the injustice. It would be very interesting to hear your opinion on this matter. What do you think about this system of dividing people's space and lives? Write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting stories. Are you ready to learn the truth about the price of warmth? Victorian mansions were incredibly cold during the winter months. Keeping the fires burning in the fireplaces was a vital and dangerous task. At night, the servants had to tend to the coals in all the living rooms. This meant endless trips up and down dark staircases with heavy buckets. Coal dust clogged their lungs and stained their immaculate uniforms. One careless move could incur the wrath of their master. The fire demanded constant attention and enormous physical effort. The servants often slept on hard benches right in the cold corridors. They could not go to their rooms for fear of missing a call. Their sleep was fitful and restless because of the constant anticipation. The sharp sound of a bell could ring at any minute of the night. The maids' hands were always covered with soot and small painful burns. No one treated these injuries, and no one paid any attention to them. At such moments, the luxury of the house seemed like a mockery of their situation. The fireplaces consumed tons of coal and the health of those who cleaned them. The darkness beyond the circle of candlelight seemed hostile. Many girls experienced a superstitious horror when left alone in the huge halls. The Golden Age was steeped in an interest in mystical phenomena. Servants often believed in ghosts inhabiting old family homes. Many mansions had dozens of fireplaces scattered across different floors. This required the staff to constantly move around in circles without rest. Night vigils depleted the strength needed for daytime work. The silence of the house was broken only by the rustling of ashes and heavy breathing. The breath of cold crept through the cracks in the huge window frames. Maids wrapped themselves in thin shawls, trying to warm themselves by someone else's fire. They were not allowed to sit in their master's chairs, even while on duty. Humility was the main virtue required of servants. Want to know how one mistake with the coals could destroy the life of an entire family? We'll talk about that in the next chapter. How did they cope with the terrible silence of the night? You've definitely never heard about this unique secret. In huge estates, there were so-called red zones for staff. At night, the rules for entering these parts of the house became extremely strict. However, it was at this time that the most fateful events took place. Servants became unwitting witnesses to events that destroyed the reputation of noble families. The information they overheard behind closed doors was their only hidden weapon. Secret meetings and illegal deals were made under the cover of deep darkness. The night corridors kept secrets that were not meant for prying ears. Secret correspondence was often passed on by trusted footmen in the late hours. It was an extremely dangerous game for everyone involved. At stake were the fates of young aristocratic women locked in their rooms. Maids often sympathized with their mistresses, seeing them as fellow prisoners. Any carelessness on the part of the servants led to shameful expulsion. In the world of the Golden Age, reputation was the only currency that mattered. Servants carried the burden of other people's shameful secrets on their shoulders. Nighttime whispers were never to be heard in the light of day. Sometimes the forbidden corridors became a meeting place for the servants themselves. These rare moments of intimacy were strictly forbidden by the rules of the mansion. Young people risked everything for a short conversation on the stairs. Human nature rebelled against the harsh Victorian prohibitions and restrictions. Each such meeting was an act of desperate courage in a gloomy world. The fear of being caught by the housekeeper gave the meetings a taste of constant anxiety. In these passageways, feelings were suppressed for the sake of propriety and status. The darkness provided only an illusory freedom for a few short minutes. The service corridors were like narrow labyrinths within the walls of the house. They allowed the servants to move around without being seen by the guests. At night, these narrow spaces became a place for exchanging rumors and news. Information spread faster than the owners could have imagined. Butlers and housekeepers kept a close eye on the moral character of their subordinates. Any hint of a romantic relationship between servants was immediately suppressed. It was part of a system of total control over the lives of the staff. Personal happiness was considered an unacceptable luxury for the working class. Despite the risk, human attachments arose even in such conditions. Shared difficulties brought people together who were forced to live in constant subordination. Nighttime meetings helped them feel like living beings rather than machines. It was a secret life, hidden behind a mask of impeccable service. If you are interested in such details from the life of past centuries, be sure to like this post. It helps us create even more high-quality historical content. Your support is very important for the development of our documentary channel. What I'm about to show you will make you look at silence in a different way. In the Victorian era, servants had to be absolutely silent. At night, every creak of the floorboards sounded like thunder to the servants. Houses in the Golden Age constantly made natural sounds due to temperature changes. Servants, exhausted by chronic sleep deprivation, often mistook these sounds for footsteps. The anticipation of reprimands or punishment turned night duty into torture. The psychological pressure was so intense that it caused auditory hallucinations. The silence of an old mansion seemed filled with hidden threats and accusations. Housekeepers often conducted surprise night checks on their staff. They glided through the corridors with lanterns like stern shadows of justice. Any speck of dust discovered could be grounds for loss of pay. The servants lived in a state of constant stress, unable to relax. The night brought no rest, only a change in the form of labor slavery. Many mansion workers suffered from deep and prolonged depression. In Victorian society, expressing emotions was considered a sign of dangerous weakness. Loneliness in a huge house full of people was a paradoxical burden. At night, the servants were left alone with their heavy thoughts. Hopes for change in their lives were illusory and almost impossible to achieve. Each night was just a precise repetition of the previous one in an endless cycle. The darkness emphasized their isolation from the rest of the happy world. A constant feeling of guilt was imposed on the servants from their first day of work. They were taught that any personal need was a manifestation of selfishness. The young people's psyche could not withstand such methodical and prolonged pressure. The servants' inner world was locked away by rules. The walls of the ceremonial halls seemed to be silent witnesses to their slow decline. Even in their sleep, the servants were afraid of missing a call from their master. Nervous exhaustion became the norm for maids and footmen. The constant fear of losing their jobs forced them to endure impossible conditions. Many of them never left the grounds of the mansion for months. The house became both a place of work and a voluntary prison for the staff. The nighttime pressure of silence only intensified the feeling of hopelessness and anguish. Life passed them by while they guarded the peace of others. How many people do you think could endure such a rhythm of life? In the next chapter, you will learn how they coped with the terrible weather and the cold inside. Did they have ways to find comfort in the darkness? The kitchen in a Victorian house was the heart that never stopped beating. While the hosts enjoyed wine, the cooks began the endless process of cleaning up. Huge copper pots had to be cleaned until they shone like mirrors. The work was done in conditions of high humidity and intense stuffiness. Grease and soot became ingrained in the workers' hands. Night work in the kitchen was physically exhausting and devoid of romance. There was no place here for beautiful dresses and social conversation. Only dirty aprons and heavy, monotonous labor until dawn. Often, preparations for the next day's feast began before midnight. Dozens of birds had to be plucked and complex vegetables prepared. The dough had to rise by the time the first maid woke up. The work was carried out in the dim and smoky light of oil lamps. The fatigue was so intense that people fell asleep at their tables, but they were always watched by the stern gaze of the head chef. A mistake in the recipe or carelessness could cost a cook his job. The kitchen was a place where the smells of food mingled with sweat. After finishing their work, the staff gathered around the slowly cooling stove. These were rare moments of calm in their busy lives. They could exchange a few words without fear of being overheard. Nighttime conversations were full of stories about distant homes. Reality quickly brought them back to work when the bell rang. Hot water was needed for the late washing of capricious hosts or guests. Night in the kitchen was a time of short breaks and long labor. The basement rooms saw more sincere tears than the front rooms. The hierarchy in the kitchen was no less rigid than in the rest of the house. The junior assistants did the dirtiest and most thankless work for hours on end. Their hands were constantly sore from cold water and stiff brushes. Even at night, they did not belong to themselves, obeying the schedule. Food supplies were stored in cold, dark pantries under lock and key. The keys to the food were always kept by the housekeeper or butler. Stealing even a small piece of bread was considered a serious crime and a sin. Hunger among the servants was common, despite the abundance of food. Every item in the kitchen had its own designated place. Order was maintained with maniacal precision throughout the long night. Violations of discipline were punished by deprivation of dinner or extra hours of work. The kitchen was the place where the discipline of the entire huge mansion was forged. The lives of the kitchen staff were hidden from the eyes of high society. They were the engine that kept the great empire running smoothly and well-fed. At night, this engine worked at the limits of human and technical capabilities. Dawn brought only a new batch of endless orders and heavy trays. This is what happens behind closed bedroom doors in the late hours. The process of going to sleep for an aristocrat was a complex ritual. Valets and maids waited patiently for their masters to return from balls. Sometimes this happened well after midnight, when their strength was exhausted. Numerous layers of expensive and complicated clothing had to be carefully removed. Unlacing corsets was a lengthy procedure that required great care and skill. The servants saw their masters at their most intimate and vulnerable moments. In those seconds, the massive grandeur were cast aside along with the heavy silk. Often, the true nature of the nobility of that time was revealed in the bedrooms, from capriciousness to open disregard for the feelings of the ordinary staff. Servants were obliged to maintain a stony expression on their pale faces. Combing the mistress's hair could take agonizingly long hours. This turned into a meditative but extremely tedious procedure for the maid. Every movement had to be honed to complete automatism. At such moments, the social gap became physically palpable and painful. The mistress could complain for hours about social gossip to her maid. Proximity to the master's body placed a huge responsibility on the servant. It was necessary to know all the habits and minor whims of one's owner. The slightest mistake in preparing a suit could cause a real scandal. Valets lived in constant tension, catering to someone else's taste and will. Many bedroom secrets never left those rooms. Servants became the keepers of their wealthy employers' most shameful secrets. Loyalty and silence were valued above any professional skills or abilities. However, this proximity to power offered them no protection. In the silence of the night, bedrooms seemed like altars of worship to human vanity and selfishness. The servants were merely a backdrop, providing the perfect picture of their master's social life. After the ritual was over, they would retreat to their cold attic rooms. Their bodies ached with fatigue, but their minds continued to work out of habit. What would happen if a servant accidentally saw something forbidden in their master's bedroom? In the next chapter, you will learn how they dealt with this dangerous knowledge. What secrets were hidden under the luxurious canopies of the beds of the Golden Age? The servants' sleeping quarters were in stark contrast to the formal halls. They were usually located on the top and most uncomfortable floors of the mansion. In summer, it was unbearably hot there, and in winter, it was deadly cold. Several people huddled together in cramped rooms. They shared a single narrow bed and their meager possessions. The thin walls offered no protection from the howling, icy night wind. Nighttime did not bring the long-awaited comfort and restful sleep that the servants longed for. The lack of heating made sleeping in the winter months a real ordeal. In the basements where the footmen slept, the situation was not much better. There was constant dampness and an unpleasant smell from the sewer pipes. The servants often woke up with a severe cough and pain in their joints. No one cared about the health of the staff while they were working. The tears shed over letters remained their deep and sad secret. The morning mercilessly shattered all dreams of returning to their native village. It brought them back to an endless series of hard and dirty chores. A feeling of hopelessness was their constant companion in these small rooms. Sometimes the attics became a place for quiet, forbidden conversations between tired friends. They shared their fears and hopes for a better future. But the housekeeper's voice could be heard at any moment, ending the conversation. Discipline had to be maintained even during legal rest hours. The servants' clothes were dried right in their bedrooms, creating additional humidity. Their shoes were often worn out and did not protect them from the cold of the basements. Social inequality was evident even in the quality of the air they breathed. Their world was limited by gray walls and low ceilings. Many mansions had special black staircases for the movement of staff. Servants hardly ever used the front entrances, even for their own needs. Their lives were hidden from the eyes of the street and noble guests. They were invisible cogs in the huge machine of social prestige. The attic rooms echoed with the stories of hundreds of broken women's destinies and lives. Each new maid brought with her her own fears and youthful dreams, but the harsh reality of the Golden Age quickly turned them into shadows. Night in the attic was a time of quiet mourning for dreams that never came true. The Victorian era was a time of strange coexistence between science and mysticism. Servants brought many rural superstitions and legends to wealthy homes. At night, these fears came to life in the dark corners of huge old mansions. Every unexplained knock was perceived as an ominous sign from above. They believed that houses held memories of past tragedies. Shadows in the corridors seemed to them to be the ghosts of former owners or servants. This created an atmosphere of constant psychological tension among all the young staff. Fear of the supernatural was mixed with fear of harsh masters. The heavy velvet curtains and abundance of mirrors frightened impressionable young women. It was considered a bad omen to see one's reflection by candlelight. Servants whispered stories about ghostly maids who had not finished their work. These legends helped them make sense of the injustice of their own difficult lot. Nighttime fears united the servants into a single, frightened, and close-knit community. Even the butlers sometimes crossed themselves when passing by locked and abandoned rooms. The owner's interest in spiritualism only heightened the general unease in the house. The servants witnessed strange rituals performed by bored noblemen. Many mansions had rooms that had been closed to everyone for decades. Servants avoided these doors, afraid of disturbing the evil sleeping there. Their imaginations painted pictures of terrible crimes hidden behind gilded panels. The reality was often more prosaic, but that did not make the fear go away. Whispers in the dark often touched on the dark spots in the history of a noble family. Servants knew about illegitimate children and hidden madmen in the family. This knowledge made their lives even more dangerous and anxious. Nighttime superstitions were just the tip of the iceberg of their general anxiety. Every holiday or religious date was accompanied by special precautions. Maids left offerings or read special prayers in dark corners. This gave them the illusion of control over their extremely unstable lives. The traditions of their ancestors helped them survive in a cold and alien world. The influence of mysticism on the Golden Age is difficult to overestimate today. Servants were the main conduits of these beliefs within wealthy and noble families. At night, the house became a battlefield between light and shadow, and the servants were always at the forefront of this invisible war. When a grand ball was held in the mansion, the night became an endless marathon. While the ladies in diamonds danced, the servants stood completely still for hours. Their legs swelled from standing for so long in their stuffy liveries. The smiles of their masters contrasted with the pallor and fatigue of the footmen against the walls. It was a triumph of form over substance and the mansion's human resources. After the last guest left, the work for the staff was just beginning. Tons of trash had to be cleaned up, and thousands of fragile glasses had to be washed. The house had to be in perfect order by breakfast. Often, people worked without sleep for more than 48 hours straight. At such moments, the line between reality and sleep was completely blurred. Mistakes due to extreme exhaustion were punished by the owners with particular severity and cynicism. The night sky was brightening when the maids finally fell into their beds. The splendor of the Golden Age was built on the sweat and tears of invisible people. Luxurious bouquets of flowers turned into mountains of smelly garbage by morning. The butler carefully collected the stubs of hundreds of candles for further strict remelting. Thriftiness was a trait of even the richest and most influential houses. In the silence after the noisy ball, the mansion seemed empty and cold. The servants were actors without lines in this endless social spectacle. Night work took years off their lives, leaving only illness in its place. Maintaining the illusion of a never-ending party required enormous human sacrifice every day. The golden cage was especially cramped on such festive nights. The joy of some people always meant additional suffering and labor for others. This law of life in the Golden Age was observed with strict and cruel precision. The servants were merely tools in the hands of their prestige-seeking masters. Many young footmen dreamed of the life of those they served. But the night put everything in its place, returning them to the cellars. Fatigue washed away any dreams, leaving only the desire to lie down and close their eyes. The ball was a celebration for the chosen few and a difficult ordeal for the rest. Dawn found them cleaning silverware and clearing away the remains of the feast. Life continued at the same pace, leaving no time for respite. Each such night brought them closer to premature old age and illness, but they continued to do their duty for a piece of bread. Dawn in a Victorian mansion did not bring the long-awaited relief to the staff of the mansion. The first rays of the sun found the servants already on their feet. They had to immediately open the heavy shutters and light the morning fires. The house gradually came to life, starting with the lowest service floors. The fatigue of the long night was hidden behind fresh aprons and neat hairstyles. Every servant had to look cheerful, as if they had slept well. The owners woke up in their warm beds, without thinking about the price of their comfort. Breakfast was served on time, without the slightest delay or excuse. The social contract of the Golden Age demanded complete self-denial from the servants. All the horror and cold of the night had to remain in deep shadow. It was the highest manifestation of professionalism to hide one's personal fatigue. Daylight made the secrets of the night less frightening for everyone. The lives of women in these houses were a series of harsh restrictions and rules. Each of them carried a story of unfulfilled hopes and sacrifices. The old mansions continue to echo with the sound of their quiet footsteps in the corridors. We often admire the style of that era, forgetting about the ordinary people. The servants exchanged brief glances as they passed each other in the doorways. There was more understanding in those glances than in any long conversations between the masters. Their shared fate made them one big family, bound together by common suffering. But social constraints forbade them to openly show this closeness and support. The world of the Golden Age continued its triumphant march in the rays of the morning sun. Huge mansions stood like monuments to human greatness and slavery hidden from view. Behind every beautiful facade lay the truth of sleepless nights and fears. Only the walls remembered the true price of this flawless and beautiful picture. The servants got used to living in this double standard of time and space. The night gave them the opportunity to be themselves, albeit in conditions of fear. The morning forced them to become faceless shadows in a strange and cold house again. The cycle repeated itself endlessly until strength finally left their tired bodies. Today we look at these houses as historical monuments of culture. But for thousands of people, they were a place of daily struggle for dignity. The night duties of servants are a dark page in history that is important to remember. After all, behind the glitter of gold, there are always real people with their own destinies. Which aspect of Victorian servants' lives struck you the most this time? Was it the exhausting night work by the fireplaces or the eternal fear of the silence in the halls? Write in the comments what other hidden aspects of life in the Golden Age you would like to learn about. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to immerse yourself in real history with us. Suggest topics for future videos in the comments below this video.